Okay, I'd like to reconvene the regular council meeting for September 3rd, 2024. We'll jump, before jump in, I'll ask council for a motion to go into close at the end of our meeting. We have something to discuss. No, at the end when we go into close. So not now. Keep your hands down. Yeah. So we'll go straight into our development reports, 18.1. This is for 9521 Wharton Street, and I'll ask our planning technician, Ms. Dewey, to introduce this. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I will be presenting a development permit, Downtown Core, and this is going to address the form and character of a new addition and renovation to the Summerland Museum. The applicant is proposing an extension to the east end of the existing building, as well as an interior renovation and basement storage space. The current OCP designation is administration, which includes the museum and other community facilities. The current zone for this property is CD7, which is a comprehensive zone. And this zone was developed to accommodate a mixed-use development adjacent to our downtown core and having unique architectural styles. This zone speaks to the general design and proposed layout of a development and states it shall be keeping with the plans of this zone. However, subsequent development and subdivisions have altered the original planned layout, and many of this comprehensive development CD7 regulations are now actually redundant. A future rezoning to align the uses better with a broader zone such as institutional may be appropriate in the future. The museum is within our downtown core, and so a downtown development permit was required to speak to the form and character. It is surrounded by diverse land uses with institutional, mixed uses, residential and commercial. During the consideration from our internal and external partners, the following main points were shared with us. Some of them of note, the realignment of the sewer service which runs through the land to allow the construction of the proposed addition. A 30,000 budget amendment was approved by yourselves, Council, to fund the relocation of the sewer line. Another main point is that 9521 and 9511 Wharton Street, although both owned by the district, are separate lots, and so a lot consolidation will also have to go forward. Removal of access from the roundabout, which is an extra entry point to the badminton club. We are proposing to move it to Brown Street. And also consideration of existing gas lines if they are to be disturbed. Also landscaping, because this is a district-owned property, the landscaping will be reviewed and approved by park staff. Archaeological modelling also indicates high potential for previously unidentified archaeological sites, which could exist on the property. And obviously with any disturbance of the land, that has to be in consideration. The application was presented to the Advisory Planning Commission on July the 25th of this year. These are some of the considerations that came from the meeting. They were very happy with the new colour, which brought it back to its original form, as well as the design was very agreeable. They were excited about the opportunity of expanding the outdoor art displays. And they also wanted to know about sustainability codes and if the addition would also get its retrofit for any sustainability, which the applicant has expressed it well. The commission members noted the closure of the additional entrance to the badminton hall, as I spoke to previously, would have a very positive impact on the road safety as that entrance comes right off of the roundabout. So looking at the function of this land, a portion of Lot 3 is currently being used as a car park by the adjacent sports hall. An alternative pedestrian footpath design was proposed and will create a boundary between the boulevard and the roundabout itself, as you can see from this rendering. As well as I've said, closing off the potentially dangerous access point to the badminton club hall there. Going into our facade and our scaling and massing, the proposed design includes expanding the existing green space and the addition of the protruding addition into the undeveloped land that fronts Prairie Valley and Rosedale roundabout could create a welcoming massing that's actually lacking from this underutilised lot. The addition continues the setback formation of the existing building, as you can see here, and could also bring a welcome focal point to the gateway of Summerland. The proposed design includes, as I said, expanding the existing green space into what is currently just paved areas. There'll be additions of flower beds and trees and landscaping, which will provide buffering between the neighbouring apartment buildings and the sports hall. The additional green space is intended to be used also by the museum to install additional outdoor displays honouring Summerland's diverse cultural heritage, and could also provide additional outdoor event space for events such as the Summerland Fall Fair. The proposed addition also includes a display area outside of the new window, which will include rocks and plants, and proposed expansion of the pathway and the outdoor displays. All of these proposals actually align with the sections of our design guidelines that encourage innovative landscaping solutions, which include art, lighting, and seating. The landscaping will be the responsibility, as I said, of the District of Summerland, as per our referral comments by our Community Services Department. The lands are district property and will be managed as such. The entire exterior of the whole museum will receive a recladding with white stucco, which will actually bring it back to its original form, as the original building was painted white. Metal screening and signages gives the exterior a more modern feel, and with the inclusion of wood textures surrounding the focal window and the main doors, this actually adds a touch of nature to a solid coloured building. With the existing building itself, there is a notable lack of windows on the current museum, which can in fact play a part in the appearance of massing of the building itself. However, with the addition of the focal point, the wall window, it provides a needed enhancement between the public and the private realm of this space, inviting the public to be part of the experience from the exterior, as well as the interior displays. The proposal did not provide a lighting schedule or drawing for the addition, and so the existing exterior landscaping and lighting Therefore, staff are recommending that section B7 be referenced when building out the lighting plan to encourage dark sky compliance, utilising our LED lighting and utilising complementary lighting to the building design. The existing museum was part of the LED retrofit, where it went through electrical and fixture upgrades. The addition will also follow this same level of green solutions. Proposed development satisfies most of our sections of our downtown development design guidelines. Any deficiencies that we felt within the design will be addressed through the terms and conditions of the permit, which you'll see in your package. These include that, obviously, as I previously mentioned, lot consolidation of the two lots together and be registered prior to the issuance of a building permit. There is a statutory right of way in favour of the District of Summerland, and this is to be removed from the title of Lot 3 prior to the building permit. There is also a utility easement that would be realigned and registered in land titles, again, before the building permit is issued. The design and installation of landscaping will be authorised and carried out by the district's Park and Recreation Department. And section B7 of our design guidelines be referenced when building out the lighting plan, as previously said, to encourage dark sky compliance, utilising LED lighting and utilising complementary lighting for the building. So these are conditions that we've included within the permit itself. So to conclude, staff find this visually interesting development, which could enhance the character of Summerland itself. And we consider it that it could create a gateway as such into the downtown core and the town centre. And with that, staff are recommending approval with the conditions placed in this permit with the presented development permit. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, questions? Councillor Peak.
With the development permit going through, do we then look at timeframes for things that will be happening within this area and the permitting and the building, et cetera?
Yes, the museum and the board of directors still have to apply for grant funding to go ahead with the building itself. There'll also be timescales from our director of works and infrastructure in regards to the realignment of the sewer line. So there are a few things that are going to have to fall in place before we actually see a building permit come into light.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Mayor. I want to say I'm very excited about this project. I think the opportunity for our community to have this kind of focus in that area will be wonderful. I commend the committee on the work they've done and the grant fundraising that they're doing. And I look forward to this whole campus of buildings that we have in that area, really enhancing our streetscape and delivery of culture to our community. Thank you.
So if a development permit is approved now, how long is that good for before it expires? Yeah, okay.
It's 2
thanks.
years.
Councilman Elf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the staff recommendation.
Okay, second. Councillor Trainer, any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed, that carries. 18.2, site-specific zoning amendment for 9576 Cedar Avenue. And this is Director of Development Services, please.
Just wait for the slides to come on screen. Thanks. Great. So the district's in receipt of a rezoning application to rezone 9576 Cedar Avenue from M2 heavy industrial to M2 with a site-specific amendment to the district zoning bylaw. So still maintaining in industrial zoning as M2 heavy industrial, but just with including 2 site-specific provisions. And the intent here is to facilitate a subdivision happening on the property. So within the district's official community plan, the subject property is designated medium industrial. As well, within our zoning bylaws mentioned, is currently zoned M2 heavy industrial. So the proposal from the owner is to subdivide, or first of all, rezone the property to allow for a subdivision to create 2 lots, Lot A and Lot B, as shown on this picture. You can see there's 2 existing buildings on the property. So the intent of this proposed lot line arrangement is to facilitate a subdivision to accommodate where those 2 buildings are, as well as a shared access easement, which is on that hatched line there on Lot B. But in order to do that, there are some requirements to vary in our zoning bylaw. So this is a subdivision that's been proposed by the applicant. You can see if you squint, there is a proposed easement that would be in favor of Lot A placed on Lot B for that access to Lot A. So as mentioned, this is a site-specific zoning bylaw request. The district's subdivision regulations state that for a M2 zoning lot with access to sewer servicing, the minimum parcel size is 1,800 square meters, and the minimum lot width is 30 meters to facilitate a subdivision. In this case, the one of the 2 lots, so Lot B, is proposing a minimum lot area of 1,320 square meters and a minimum lot width of 26.21 meters wide. Relevant OCP policies for this application is, there should be no really impacts to other adjacent uses and we should minimize the land use conflicts. Definitely this would apply in this situation. It's surrounded by other industrial properties. Consider consolidation and industrial uses to look to within the district to meet the servicing needs of the community and the natural environment. And there's also a policy here to encourage infilling and the efficient use of the existing industrial lands that we have limited in the district of Summerland. So in terms of internal referral, some general comments. There'll be a requirement for new water and sewer service for the new Lot A. Most likely electrical service request as well for a new electrical service for the new lot as well. We need to confirm the spatial separations for the existing buildings, meet the BCB's building code requirements. So that'll be further reviewed with the subdivision. There's an indication here that there might need a separate metering or maybe a right of way because of the trespass situation for electrical. Some comments here from external referrals. This is over top of an existing high pressure pipeline from Fortis, BC. So just cognizant of that if there's any work within the road to facilitate the subdivision. And then BC Transit did provide some comments that they don't see a big impact. There's not a big density change being proposed to result in any impact for transit. So under the new changes to the Local Government Act, where the District of Summerland is not required to hold a public hearing if a proposed zoning bylaw is consistent with the official community plan. And in fact, we must not hold a public hearing if certain requirements of residential development, although this isn't residential development, are met for an application. But in staff's opinion, we feel that this application is consistent with our OCP and that a public hearing is not required. So we are recommending that council do go forward with waiving the public hearing and provide first, second, and third reading. The notice of the waiver of this public hearing was provided in the last 2 editions of the Summerland review in accordance with legislation. As well, adjacent owners were notified of the notice to waive the public hearing in accordance with legislation as well, 2 weeks prior to this being brought forward. At the Advisory Planning Commission, not a lot of comments. They are just in general kind of clarification to staff with regards to the application, but they ultimately resolved to move forward with support of the rezoning. So from staff's perspective, there's no new development proposed for this application. We feel at the staff level that the site-specific zoning amendments are fairly minor and won't alter the surrounding community. And the proposal as well, even if these lots do get redeveloped in the future, we feel that it would be considered an infilling and a efficiency use of land, of industrial land, to allow for other industrial use applications in accordance with our OCP. And there is still the subdivision application process, which will look more at the servicing components of this. So on that basis, we're recommending that council move forward with waiving the public hearing and then also providing 3 readings to the amendment bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. Brad, can you tell me, it's only a lock block wall that is the retaining, where the one, if you go back to that one, that last picture with the, yes.
Yeah.
So where GPH's van is lot A, and it's a block retaining wall. Is there any reason that that property line or the subdivision that you're asking for couldn't have been straight instead of kicking off and following the driveway? So if you take back a look at one of the yes.
The elbow.
Yes, you see right there. Is there any reason that that couldn't have gone straight and just removed the lock blocks? And that might have given a little bit less of a variance for the lot size of B. I just observed that and I just thought it was kind of odd, but.
Through your worship to Councillor Patton. I don't think there's a planning rationale as to why the line had to jog. I think probably this is just what was being requested by the owner. And if council so chooses, they can decide to hear from him if he wants to hear.
Thank you. Through the mayor, through our director of planning, I think it's all to do with access to that north side of the building for the doorways to keep it accessible. And that's why it's an easement and not a, permanent lot line, so to speak. It makes sense. I like this situation. I don't have a problem with it.
Councillor Pig.
Thank you. My question perhaps doesn't really relate to the planning part of it, but in the division of these into 2 lots, is there an advantage for conveyance? Does it create greater assessment? Is there those kind of impacts? I actually think this is an improvement, and it's probably will be better in the future for this particular land to be in 2 parcels.
Through your worship to Councillor Peak, I think that's probably part of the plan from the owner's perspective, is to rectify a bit of the issue that's existing today with the 2 separate buildings, and that in the future things could one could be sold, one could be be maintained, or succession planning, etc. There'd be more options available at that point in time.
Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Okay, can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Peak. We just get that on the screen. Oops. Oh, Councillor Barkle.
Thank you, Worship. I can certainly see that there's an efficiency. If you have 2 different businesses in 2 different buildings, maybe the business wants to buy a lot, it makes them much more saleable. Does a lot of commercial or industrial areas allow caretaker units, right? Are there caretaker units here? And would they now be allowed to have one in each building, which would, you know, in a small way, add to the housing stock?
Through your worship to Council Barkle, I don't know actually off the top of my head if there is anyone living there.
Well, and that doesn't matter in the long run. It doesn't affect the decision. Sure. Right, yeah.
My name is Karsten Nielsen. I'm the owner of the property. I've been the owner for just over 40 years. So as far as the caretaker suite, we did build a caretaker suite on the property. During COVID time, about 2.5 years ago, we ended up building the caretaker suite there. A lot of it was to do is the fact that, of course, there's been vandalism in the area. And we've actually had, also on the property across where Detonate Brewing is. And there's actually been 3 vandalisms that have happened in the last couple of years. So I would encourage anybody in the industrial area to actually build caretaker suites. Whether this lot is suitable for that, I do not know down the road, but there would be that possibility that each one is allowed one caretaker suite.
Okay, thank you. Good. Yep. Anyone else? I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed, that carries. 18.3, Housing Accelerator Fund, Mr. Dolvett.
Thank you, Worship. So this is seeking council's approval to move forward the grant application for the second intake to the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation's Housing Accelerator Fund. So for council's awareness, we did apply to this Housing Accelerator Fund in August of last year, August 2023, in the first call out and intake process for the Housing Accelerator Fund. We were unsuccessful with that grant application. And so because it was very much oversubscribed, and obviously it's very much a political issue to encourage more housing, they've opened up a second intake to only those local governments across Canada. This is a federal program that were unsuccessful in the first round. So one of the requirements is that you have to have been unsuccessful in the first round. And I think the federal government has allocated $400 million to that second intake process. So on that basis, we have drafted a new Housing Accelerator Fund action plan. The requirements of the first intake are similar to the second intake. We are required to have a 7-pillar housing action plan. And then from that 7-pillar housing action plan, project out the number of additional housing units that we can expect within our community over the next 3 years from these initiatives. So there's some math and background work behind the scenes, and we have already engaged Urban Systems to help us with some of that projection analysis on what can we expect for housing impacts in our community based on the proposed action plan. I do want to point out that we have drafted this housing action plan, but we had a meeting on Friday last week with representatives from CMHC, Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and they gave us further guidance on our draft housing action plan. And so attachment number 1 in council's package has been updated since that meeting to include 7 action items, but I think only 2 are changing. We've added back in development approvals process improvement, which they felt that was a high scoring one from our previous application. And we've expanded a bit on our parking improvements to our zoning bylaw, although a lot of that work was already completed with our zoning bylaw update. They felt that it was really strong work that we've already completed, and it's still eligible for this second intake process. So that's a number 6. So number 4 and 6 have been added to our action, and the other items have been just included in the other 5 remaining action items. So I'm not going to go in detail in terms of the actual details of all the 7 action items, you can read it at your leisure. There's some big things in here for us as a community to consider, but I do want to say that a lot of it is tying into council strategic priorities. For example, a DCC review is on our a market for completion next year. Same with an OCP review is also on the docket for next year. So the consideration of urban growth expansion is something that we already have to do as a community going into our OCP review. So yeah, I'm happy to take any questions on this. I do want to state though that the application deadline was very tight to bring this back before CMHC, and it's September 13th for us to resubmit for this application. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Council questions, Councilor Betts.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor, and thank you, Brad. I know that obviously 2024 was a huge lift for the development department. And I did take a good look at this proposal because I found that, you know, in the first application, your department was able to really target not only just the low-hanging fruit of the first eligibility criteria, but that really targeted some important initiatives in our community to make things better for getting more homes. So now to transition to the second application, I find that because a number of those items have been checked off the list, we've had to add a few more and it's gotten more complicated. And so you said there was just 2 more that changed, but I thought it was a little different. But when I was looking at the urban systems proposal, the cost of the action items, they didn't total it, but I did because I was kind of curious because each one had this approximate investment of some 100,000 to 150,000 for the one action item. Well, the total came to 675,000 to $1.1 million of our money that we will have to give the development department to accomplish these goals, which then gets us some money back to help with our infrastructure. And I'm just trying to look at the cost benefit analysis of committing to this program when I'm just seeing a huge lift on our end and a huge financial commitment. And I'm not sure how much reward that we're receiving as a community. So, you know, like I looked at it and it said, okay, approximately $32,300 would be the final number that would come back to the district per additional unit if you're chosen. So like if we're investing somewhere between 675,000 and $1 million, I'm just kind of curious, like what kind of number does the district see receiving for the action items that we would achieve?
Thank you, Councillor. Good questions, and I could tell you've done a lot of analysis on this, so thank you for doing that. So our previous application, although we were unsuccessful, the total amount that we requested was around $4.3 million, based on our housing projections, and that's again a formula that CMHC has created to come up with this you know, how much we're eligible based on the number of units we can expect from our work. Some of the price tags for the consulting support are quite high, and I would agree that some of that is work that we're already have on the docket to do. And the intent of this grant application is to use the grant funding for that work. So like that $650,000 amount, you know, roughly you guessed, that is eligible to go into that $4.3 million. But we wouldn't be doing all of the work if we were unsuccessful, which was the case last year. So like we did have to go forward with Bill 44 implementation as an example, because we're required to by the province. But that was something that was already in our plan. It was in terms of discussing infill and density with the community. So you know, that would have allowed us to have funding available to do that work instead of relying on other sources of funding. So Some of that, again, we tried to align as best we could to council's strategic priorities. We are also required to do an OCP amendment. We do want to update the DCCs, which will be a big cost if we were unsuccessful with this grant in terms of consulting dollars to help with that project as well. So from staff's perspective, I think that although it is a lot of work, I do want to be cognizant that this will still have a big lift on our department to complete it all within the next 3 years. I think it's worth it from us, because those dollars can go to those projects that we apply for.
Hello?
Okay, so I appreciate the clarification that that return in funding would also be eligible to pay for the work that it takes to do that. But then it reduces the amount that we actually have to improve our infrastructure to handle this growth. So it's this balance that I'm just kind of, I'm not seeing the full financial picture of this investment to see what we're getting back. Yeah, maybe the accountant has some crunching for us.
I was going to say $4 million is more than 700,000.
Yeah. I like it.
Do you go to school for more than that? Anyone else? I fear that we're spending money to ask for money for grants that will once again be told is oversubscribed, but I think we don't have any choice. You never know. Maybe this will be our time. So I think we should go for it. Councilor Parkle?
I was just wondering, is there anything we're doing that's unique that would might get their attention?
That's a good question. Yeah. So through the chair too, Councilor Barkwell. We tried, again, that's part of the reason why we've amended these since even Friday's discussion with CMHC, and they've provided a 10-pillar best practices document of what was successful in the first intake from what they learned from communities that they provided funding for. I think some of the ones that are really big in our area that not every local government would be comfortable doing is in particular number 7. Large scale pre-zoning for downtown density. It's been something that I know council's had previous discussions on before, and it's related to number 3, which is suggesting that we develop an amenity cost charge. But if council does go forward with amenity cost charge through the DCC bylaw review, that would give then council the ability to do large scale pre-zoning to allow for a substantial amount of density in our downtown core, which is in alignment with our downtown official community plan amendments. So, and I think a lot of local governments aren't willing to do that step of pre-zoning properties for development and density. Some are. Kelowna is a good example. They are actually doing that, but not every municipality. So I think that actually puts us a bit above the top for what we've put forward.
Councilor Betts?
Can I ask, Fred, what do you think about the grant program? Because number 4 is developing, like the municipality developing a secondary suite and multi-unit grant program to our residents that the district would be putting together, and we would be putting money out to our residents. I just feel like we're putting ourselves forward to some really large commitments in this strategy that I'm not comfortable with.
Through your worship to Councilor Betts. Again, the intent in the grant program, and that's why the dollar amount was like, I think 250,000, was that we'd be using the federal government's grant through CMHC for this grant program. And I as well think that could be a valuable tool for our community. I think despite Bill 44 and allowing up to 4 residential units per property, there's a real lack of uptake. That's going to be, I think, the next challenge of people willing to redevelop their single family house properties, just because it's hard to get financing. It's hard to justify the costs, and people don't really understand it either. That actually dovetails well into our first pillar, was to try to encourage it. And we've continually heard that, honestly, the cost for our electrical department in particular is a barrier, because then that means a new meter and, new electrical servicing request, and those costs can be high depending on where you live. So we see that grant program being really attractive, I think, for a lot of our members in the community.
Councillor Peak.
I feel that the points that we're putting forward for this grant allow us the opportunity and the tools to work forward in the areas that we have identified that we want to work forward on. And in municipal government, if you're not planning to do what you're planning to do, then you really are failing. So to be able to lay ourselves out so we better understand exactly where we're aiming ourselves and to look for grants to be able to support that, I think is an important initiative, both from our staff and from our council. So I think this is something that we should be doing.
Councillor Parkman.
Yeah, so I understand it. I haven't gone through this as thoroughly as I should maybe, but there's things that we'll do. We want to do anyway. Certainly, I've been agitating a long time for DCC reviews and such. And being able to do with the new legislation, the AACs, that's great. We want to do it and it'll allow these things. But there's other things we're not necessarily going to do if we don't get the grant, right? So then that takes some of the risk away here. So it certainly seems worthwhile to me. I mean, Mayor Holmes is right. We're always spending money on the chance of getting money, and I guess overall we do well.
Okay, so we need a motion on the table, on the floor here. Councillor Patton?
As written.
Okay, and second. Councillor Van Elfen, any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? And you're in favor, Councillor Betts? Yeah, and none opposed. That carries. Moving along, business arising, 19.1, corporate officer, please.
Well, thank you, Mayor Holmes. So as always, committee of the whole meetings occur when council in its entirety sits as a committee to consider items in more detail and report its findings and recommendations to council for approval. At the August 13th committee of the whole meeting, council and committee passed the following resolution on the screen regarding downtown garbage receptacles, which is now before council for consideration.
Okay, Councillor Peak.
I'll bring this motion forward.
Okay, second, Councillor Van Elfen. Any further discussion on this? I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, that carries. Next one.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. So same as before, at the August 13th meeting, council and committee passed the following resolution on the screen regarding downtown streetlight designs, which is now before council for consideration.
Councillor Van Elfen. Move. Councillor Patton. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed, that carries. Moving on to notices of motion. Does anybody have a notice of motion? No? We'll move on to councillor reports. Anybody have a report? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just taking the opportunity to thank our community for paying attention to all of our school zones as our students head back to school starting today, and that it's 30 kilometers an hour. Penticton has changed all their school zones to now be permanent playground amenity zones, and it's 30 kilometers an hour year round. But here in Summerland, it still stands. Our regular sun up to sundown, I believe, is how school zones work. And so I just thank everybody for taking time to pay attention to our little people and learning how to ride bikes on the road.
Thank you. Nothing else? Okay. I'd like to, upon adjournment, ask a motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 91K of the community charter. Councillor Trainer, Councillor Peak, all in favor? That carries. Thank you very much.